Welcome back. This is Auto Reviews, and today we're going to talk about one of the most critical and urgent issues facing Pakistan in 2025, the devastating floods that have once again hit the country, and the shocking insights revealed in the latest UK report. This is not just another news update. It is a deep dive into what has happened, how Pakistan has performed in its flood management response, and what the international community, especially the United Kingdom, has exposed about the underlying truth behind these recurring disasters. So stay tuned, because this is a story that concerns not only Pakistan, but the entire world as we face a changing climate and increasing natural disasters. Floods have always been a part of Pakistan's history due to its geography. Heavy monsoon patterns and major rivers like the Indus. But what we are witnessing in 2025 is on another level altogether. Heavy monsoon rains began earlier than expected, with cloudbursts in parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Punjab and Sindh, and the water levels rose rapidly. Within days, rivers overflowed, embankments broke, and thousands of homes were submerged. Images from the ground show streets turned into rivers, people stranded on rooftops, and livestock swept away in torrents of muddy water. These are not isolated scenes, but widespread across province. According to early estimates, more than 2 million people have been directly affected by the floods this year, with nearly 400,000 displaced from their homes. Critical infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and power stations, has been damaged, and once again, questions are being raised about Pakistan's preparedness, the government's response, and whether lessons from previous disasters have been truly learned. Now let's look at what the UK report has revealed. The British government, in collaboration with climate researchers and humanitarian organizations, released a detailed assessment in mid-2025 analyzing the causes, the management response, and the international support needed for Pakistan. The report makes it clear these floods are not just natural disasters, but the result of a dangerous mix of climate change, mismanagement, and lack of long-term planning. The report highlights how melting glaciers in the north, combined with intense monsoon rains, have increased river volumes beyond sustainable limits. At the same time, rapid urbanization without proper drainage systems has worsened flooding in cities. But what is most concerning is the claim that billions of dollars in international aid over the last decade have not been fully utilized for building resilient infrastructure. Instead, delays, corruption, and inefficiency have left communities vulnerable year after year. This is where the performance review becomes important. How has Pakistan actually performed in 2025 when facing the floods? On one hand, there have been improvements compared to the catastrophic floods of 2022. The government had set up early warning systems in many districts, and this time alerts were issued before the heaviest rains. In some areas, people were able to evacuate in time, saving lives. The Army and rescue agencies mobilized quickly with boats, helicopters, and medical aid. Social media campaigns were also launched to spread awareness faster. These efforts show some progress in preparedness and response. However, the scale of destruction shows that much more is needed. Villages in Sindh and Baluchistan were still cut off for days without relief. Camps for displaced families were overcrowded, with insufficient food and clean water. Children were seen suffering from waterborne diseases like diarrhea and cholera. The health system was once again overwhelmed. And despite promises of better infrastructure after 2022, many embankments and flood defenses collapsed this year, raising questions about whether funds allocated for reconstruction were actually spent properly. The UK report specifically points out that while Pakistan has received international funds for climate resilience, monitoring of these projects has been weak. That means money is often pledged but not effectively translated into real, protective infrastructure on the ground. This brings us to the bigger question: why does Pakistan continue to suffer such massive losses every time floods strike? Part of the answer is geography and climate. The Indus River Basin is naturally flood-prone, but the other part, and this is where the UK report focuses heavily, is governance, unchecked construction on riverbeds, poor urban planning, illegal housing societies, and lack of enforcement of environmental regulations all contribute to worsening floods. For example, Karachi, Pakistan's largest city, saw urban flooding again this year, largely because drainage systems remain clogged with waste and natural waterways have been encroached upon by construction. Instead of water flowing out, it gets trapped, submerging entire neighborhoods. The report calls this a man-made disaster layered on top of natural rainfall. Now, let's discuss the economic cost, because performance cannot be measured without understanding the financial impact. Early estimates suggest Pakistan's economy will take a hit of over $4 billion due to the 2025 floods. Agricultural losses are massive, with rice, cotton, and wheat crops destroyed across Sindh and Punjab. Livestock losses will affect dairy and meat supply chains for months. Roads and railways damaged by floods will slow down trade, and ordinary citizens will face rising food prices, job losses, and shortage of essentials. This comes at a time when Pakistan's economy is already struggling with inflation, debt repayments, and a need for foreign aid. The UK report warns that without serious reforms, Pakistan could enter a vicious cycle where every year floods push millions back into poverty, wiping out any progress made in development. But beyond criticism, the report also offers recommendations. It stresses the need for investment in long-term flood defenses, such as modern dams, water reservoirs, and river management systems. It calls for strengthening urban drainage systems, enforcing strict building codes, and protecting wetlands that naturally absorb excess water. Importantly, it suggests transparent use of international funds with independent audits to ensure money goes where it is needed. It also highlights the role of community-based solutions, training local populations in emergency response, equipping villages with basic rescue equipment, and raising awareness at the grassroots level. These are steps that could reduce the human toll in future floods. Let's also talk about the human side of this disaster. Numbers and reports can only tell part of the story. When you see families carrying their children through waist-deep water, or elderly people sitting helplessly on broken roads, you realize the human suffering behind the statistics. In Sindh, entire villages were submerged, leaving people with no shelter. In Punjab, schools have been converted into relief camps where hundreds sleep in cramped conditions. In Baluchistan, remote areas are still waiting for helicopters to drop food, and medicine. The resilience of ordinary Pakistanis is remarkable, but it also raises a question: how long must citizens bear the brunt of disasters while governance fails to protect them? International response has been mixed. The UK, as highlighted in its report, has pledged additional humanitarian aid focusing on clean water, medical supplies, and emergency shelter. Other countries and organizations like the UN and Red Cross are also providing assistance. However, donor fatigue is real. The global community has already spent billions on Pakistan floods in recent years, and questions are being asked about accountability. People want to know whether their donations are making a difference. This is why transparency is crucial to restore trust and ensure continued support. So, how does Pakistan's performance in 2025 measure up overall? If we were to give a balanced review, we'd say progress has been made in early warning systems and faster initial response. But when it comes to long-term resilience, infrastructure, and governance, Pakistan's performance still falls short. The recurring cycle of disaster and relief cannot continue indefinitely. The UK report has made it clear Pakistan needs systemic reforms, not just emergency responses. And unless those reforms are implemented with seriousness, the human and economic toll will keep rising every year. Now, let's put this into perspective for the future. Climate models suggest that South Asia will face more frequent and intense rainfall in the coming decades due to global warming. That means what we are seeing in 2025 could become the new normal. Without adaptation, millions more lives will be at risk. Pakistan must invest in resilience today to protect tomorrow. That includes not only infrastructure, but also policy changes, environmental protection, and strong institutions that can deliver results. International partners like the UK can provide support, but ultimately, it is Pakistan itself that must take charge of its destiny. To conclude, the 2025 floods in Pakistan are a tragic reminder of how vulnerable nations are in the face of climate change. Poor planning and governance failures. The UK report has exposed hidden truths that many already suspected but needed confirmation that aid has been mismanaged, that systemic reforms are urgently needed, and that the human cost of inaction is unacceptable. But within this crisis also lies an opportunity. An opportunity to rethink, to rebuild, and to finally prioritize the safety and future of millions of citizens. The question is, will Pakistan seize this opportunity? Or will we be back here again next year with the same story, the same devastation, and the same unanswered questions? That wraps up today's deep dive on the Flood Alert 2025 in Pakistan. This has been Auto Reviews, bringing you not just cars and machines, but also critical reviews of real-world issues that shape our lives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you think. Can Pakistan break free from this cycle of disaster, or are we destined to keep repeating history? Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.